The Faroe Islands, Faroese, Føroyar, pronounced Foea, Danish, Faroorn, pronounced F-O-N, or the Faroe Islands, a North Atlantic archipelago located 200 miles (320 kilometers) north-northwest of Scotland and about halfway between Norway and Iceland, are an autonomous country of the Kingdom of Denmark. Total area is about 540 square miles (1,400 square kilometers) with a population of 50,322 in October 2017. The terrain is rugged. The climate is subpolar oceanic climate (CFC), windy, wet, cloudy, and cool. Temperatures average above freezing throughout the year because of the Gulf Stream. Between 1035 and 1814, the Faroes were part of the hereditary Kingdom of Norway. In 1814, the Treaty of Kiel granted Denmark control over the islands, along with two other Norwegian island possessions, Greenland and Iceland. The Faroe Islands have been a self-governing country within the Kingdom of Denmark since 1948. The Faroese have control of most of their domestic affairs. Those that are the responsibility of Denmark include military defense, policing and the Justice Department, currency, and foreign affairs. However, as they are not part of the same customs area as Denmark, the Faroe Islands have an independent trade policy and can establish trade agreements with other states. The islands also have representation in the Nordic Council as members of the Danish delegation. The Faroe Islands also have their own national teams competing in certain sports. Etymology. In Faroese, the name appears as Føroyar. Oyar represents the plural of oy, older Faroese for island. Due to sound changes, the modern Faroese word for island is oyggjj. The first element, for, may reflect an Old Norse word fair sheep, although this analysis is sometimes disputed because Faroese now uses the word sayr from Old Norse sor to mean sheep. Another possibility is that the Irish monks, who settled the island around 625, had already given the islands a name related to the Gaelic word fiaran, meaning land or estate. This name could then have been passed on to the Norwegian settlers, who then added Oyar islands. The name thus translates as either islands of sheep or islands of fiaran. In Danish, the name Faroorn contains the same elements, though orn is the definite plural of o island. In English, it may be seen as redundant to say the Faroe Islands, since the o comes from an element meaning island, most notably in the BBC shipping forecast, where the waters around the islands are called Faroes. The name is also sometimes spelled Faroe. History. Archaeological evidence shows settlers living on the Faroe Islands in two successive periods prior to the arrival of the Norse, the first between 300 and 600 AD and the second between 600 and 800 AD. Scientists from the University of Aberdeen have also found early cereal pollen from domesticated plants, which further suggests people may have lived on the islands before the Vikings arrived. Archaeologist Mike Church noted that Dickwell see below mentioned what may have been the Faroes. He also suggested that the people living there might have been from Ireland, Scotland, or Scandinavia, possibly with groups from all three areas settling there. A Latin account of a voyage made by Brendan, an Irish monastic saint who lived around 484 to 578, includes a description of Insulae islands resembling the Faroe Islands. This association, however, is far from conclusive in its description. Dickwell, an Irish monk of the early 9th century, wrote a more definite account. In his geographical work De Mensura Orbis Terrae he claimed he had reliable information of Heremiti ex Nostra Scotia, hermits from our land of Ireland, Scotland, who had lived on the northerly islands of Britain for almost 100 years until the arrival of Norse pirates. Norsemen settled the islands c. 800, bringing Old West Norse, which evolved into the modern Faroese language. According to Icelandic sagas such as Fareyr saga, one of the best-known men in the island was Tróndur I Gotu, a descendant of Scandinavian chiefs who had settled in Dublin, Ireland. Tróndur led the battle against Sigmund Brestersson, the Norwegian monarchy and the Norwegian Church. The Norse and Norse Gael settlers probably did not come directly from Scandinavia, but rather from Norse communities surrounding the Irish Sea, Northern Isles and Outer Hebrides of Scotland, including the Shetland and Orkney Islands. A traditional name for the islands in Irish, na Sigari, possibly refers to the Aya Skeggher island beards, a nickname given to island dwellers. According to the Faraenga saga, more emigrants left Norway who did not approve of the monarchy of Harald Fairhair ruled c. 872 to 930. These people settled the Faroes around the end of the 9th century. Early in the 11th century, Sigmundur Brestison (961–1005), whose clan had flourished in the southern islands before invaders from the northern islands almost exterminated it, escaped to Norway. He was sent back to take possession of the islands for Olaf Tryggvason, king of Norway from 995 to 1000. Sigmundur introduced Christianity, forcing Tróndur I Gotu to convert or face beheading and, though Sigmundur was subsequently murdered, Norwegian taxation was upheld. Norwegian control of the Faroes continued until 1814, although, when the Kingdom of Norway 872-1397 entered the Kalmar Union with Denmark, it gradually resulted in Danish control of the islands. The Reformation with Protestant evangelical Lutheranism and Reformed reached the Faroes in 1538. When the union between Denmark and Norway dissolved as a result of the Treaty of Kiel in 1814, Denmark retained possession of the Faroe Islands. Norway itself was joined in a union with Sweden. Following the turmoil caused by the Napoleonic Wars (1803–1815) in 1816, the Faroe Islands became a county in the Danish kingdom. As part of mercantilism, Denmark maintained a monopoly over trade with the Faroe Islands and forbade their inhabitants trading with others, e.g., the geographically close Britain. The trade monopoly in the Faroe Islands was abolished in 1856, after which the area developed as a modern fishing nation with its own fishing fleet. The national awakening from 1888 initially arose from a struggle to maintain the Faroese language and was thus culturally oriented, but after 1906 it became more political with the foundation of political parties of the Faroe Islands. In the first year of World War II, on 12 April 1940, British troops occupied the Faroe Islands, shortly after the Operation Weserübung with the Nazi German invasion of Denmark on 9 April 1940. In 1942–1943 the British Royal Engineers, under the leadership of Lieutenant Col. William Law MC, built the only airport in the Faroe Islands, Vagar Airport. Control of the islands reverted to Denmark following the war, but Danish rule had been undermined, and Iceland's independence served as a precedent for many Faroese. The Faroese independence referendum, 1946 resulted in 50.73% in favour of independence to 49.27% against. The Faroe Islands subsequently declared independence on 18 September 1946, however, this declaration was annulled by Denmark on 20 September on the grounds that a majority of the Faroese voters had not supported independence and King Christian X of Denmark dissolved the Faroese Lagting on 24 September. The dissolution of the Lagting was on 8 November followed by the Faroese parliamentary election of 1946 in which the parties in favour of full independence received a total of 5,396 votes while the parties against received a total of 7,488 votes. As a reaction to the growing self-government and independence movements, Denmark finally granted the Faroe Islands home rule with a high degree of local autonomy on 30 March 1948. In 1973 the Faroe Islands declined to join Denmark in entering the European Economic Community, later absorbed into the European Union. The islands experienced considerable economic difficulties following the collapse of the fishing industry in the early 1990s, but have since made efforts to diversify the economy. Support for independence has grown and is the objective of the Republican Party. Geography. The Faroe Islands are an island group consisting of 18 major islands and a total of 779 islands, islets, and skerries about 655 kilometers (407 miles) off the coast of northern Europe, between the Norwegian Sea and the North Atlantic Ocean, about halfway between Iceland and Norway, the closest neighbours being the Northern Isles and the Outer Hebrides of Scotland. Its coordinates are 62°00 and 06°47 W. Distance from the Faroe Islands to North Rona, Scotland, uninhabited, 260 kilometers (160 miles). Shetland, Fola, Scotland, 285 kilometers (177 miles). Orkney, Westray, Scotland, 300 kilometers (190 miles). Scotland mainland, 320 kilometers (200 miles). Iceland, 450 kilometers (280 miles). Ireland, 670 kilometers (420 miles). Norway, 670 kilometers (420 miles). Denmark, 990 kilometers (620 miles). The islands cover an area of 1399 square kilometers (540 sq mi) and have small lakes and rivers, but no major ones. There are 1117 kilometers (694 miles) of coastline. The only significant uninhabited island is Lítla Dímun. The islands are rugged and rocky with some low peaks. The coasts are mostly cliffs. The highest point is Sleitaratindor in northern Eysturoy, 882 metres (2,894 feet) above sea level. The Faroe Islands are dominated by tholeiitic basalt lava, which was part of the Great Thulian Plateau during the Paleogene period. Climate. The climate is classed as subpolar oceanic climate according to the Köppen climate classification, CFC, with areas having a tundra climate, especially in the mountains, although some coastal or low-lying areas can have very mild winter versions of a tundra climate. The overall character of the island's climate is influenced by the strong warming influence of the Atlantic Ocean, which produces the North Atlantic Current. This, together with the remoteness of any source of warm airflows, ensures that winters are mild, mean temperature 3.0 to 4.0 degrees Celsius or 37 to 39 degrees Fahrenheit, while summers are cool, mean temperature 9.5 to 10.5 degrees Celsius or 49 to 51 degrees Fahrenheit. The islands are windy, cloudy and cool throughout the year with an average of 210 rainy or snowy days per year. The islands lie in the path of depressions moving northeast, making strong winds and heavy rain possible at all times of the year. Sunny days are rare and overcast days are common. Hurricane Faith struck the Faroe Islands on 5 September 1966 with sustained winds over 100 miles per hour (160 kilometers per hour), and only then did the storm cease to be a tropical system. The climate varies greatly over small distances, due to the altitude, ocean currents, topography and winds. Precipitation varies considerably throughout the archipelago. In some highland areas, snow cover can last for months with snowfalls possible for the greater part of the year on the highest peaks. Summer snowfall is by no means rare, while in some sheltered coastal locations, several years pass without any snowfall whatsoever. Tórshavn receives frosts more often than other areas just a short distance to the south. Snow is also seen at a much higher frequency than on outlying islands nearby. The area receives on average 49 frosts a year. The collection of meteorological data on the Faroe Islands began in 1867. Winter recording began in 1891, and the warmest winter occurred in 2016-17 with an average temperature of 6.1 degrees Celsius. Topic: Nature. Topic: A collection of Faroese marine algae resulting from a survey sponsored by NATO, the British Museum Natural History and the Carlsberg Foundation, is preserved in the Ulster Museum catalogue numbers, F3195-F3307. It is one of 10 Execati sets. Flora. The natural vegetation of the Faroe Islands is dominated by Arctic alpine plants, wildflowers, grasses, moss and lichen. Most of the lowland area is grassland and some is heath, dominated by shrubby heathers, mainly Calluna vulgaris. Among the herbaceous flora that occur in the Faroe Islands is the cosmopolitan marsh thistle, Cirsium palustre. Although there are no trees native to the Faroe Islands, limited species were able to be successfully introduced to the region, including the black cottonwood, also known as the California poplar, Populus trichocarpa. A few small plantations consisting of plants collected from similar climates such as Tierra del Fuego in South America and Alaska thrive on the islands. Fauna. The bird fauna of the Faroe Islands is dominated by seabirds and birds attracted to open land like heather, probably because of the lack of woodland and other suitable habitats. Many species have developed special Faroese sub-species, common eider, common starling, Eurasian wren, common murre, and black guillemot. The pied raven was endemic to the Faroe Islands, but has now become extinct. Only a few species of wild land mammals are found in the Faroe Islands today, all introduced by humans. 3 species are thriving on the islands today: mountain hare Lepus timidus, brown rat Rattus norvegicus, and the house mouse Mus musculus. Apart from these, there once was a local domestic sheep breed, the Faroe sheep depicted on the coat of arms. A variety of feral sheep survived on Litla Dimmen until the mid-19th century. Gray seals Halichoerus grypus are common around the shorelines. Several species of Cetacea live in the waters around the Faroe Islands. Best known are the long-finned pilot whales Globicephala melina, which are still hunted by the islanders in accordance with long-standing local tradition. Orcas Orcinus orca are regular visitors around the islands. The domestic animals of the Faroe Islands are a result of 1,200 years of isolated breeding. As a result, many of the island's domestic animals are found nowhere else in the world. Faroese domestic breeds include Faroe pony, Faroe cow, Faroe sheep, Faroese goose, and Faroese duck. Politics and government. The Faroese government holds executive power in local government affairs. The head of the government is called the lagmor, law person, and serves as a premier. Any other member of the cabinet is called a landseirismor, national committee man, or landseiskvinna, national committee woman. The Faroese parliament, the Lagting, law assembly, dates back to Viking times and is believed to be one of the oldest parliaments in the world. The parliament currently has 33 members. In contemporary times, elections are held at municipal, national Lagting and Danish Folketing levels. Until 2007, there were 7 electoral districts, each comprising a sysla, while Streymoy was divided into a northern and southern part Tórshavn region. However, on 25 October 2007, changes were made such that the entire country is one electoral district, giving each vote equal weight. Administrative divisions. Administratively, the islands are divided into 30 municipalities within which there are 120 or so settlements. Traditionally, there are also the 6 sisler similar to the British shire: Norrayar, Aistorøy, Streymoy, Vagar, Sandoy, and Suðuroy. Although today sisla technically means police district, the term is still commonly used to indicate a geographical region. In earlier times, each sisla had its own assembly, the so-called Varting spring assembly. Relationship with Denmark. The Faroe Islands have been under Norwegian-Danish control since 1388. The 1814 Treaty of Kiel terminated the Danish-Norwegian Union, and Norway came under the rule of the King of Sweden, while the Faroe Islands, Iceland, and Greenland remained Danish possessions. From ancient times the Faroe Islands had a parliament Lagting, which was abolished in 1816, and the Faroe Islands were to be governed as an ordinary Danish amt county, with the Amtmand as its head of government. In 1851, the Lagting was reinstated, but, until 1948, served mainly as an advisory body. The islands are home to a notable independence movement that has seen an increase in popularity within recent decades. At the end of World War II, some of the population favored independence from Denmark, and on 14 September 1946, an independence referendum was held on the question of secession. It was a consultative referendum, the parliament was not bound to follow the people's vote. This was the first time that the Faroese people had been asked whether they favored independence or wanted to continue within the Danish kingdom. The result of the vote was a narrow majority in favor of secession, but the coalition in parliament could not reach agreement on how this outcome should be interpreted and implemented, and because of these irresolvable differences, the coalition fell apart. A parliamentary election was held a few months later, in which the political parties that favored staying in the Danish kingdom increased their share of the vote and formed a coalition. Based on this, they chose to reject secession. Instead, a compromise was made and the Folketing passed a Home Rule law that went into effect in 1948. The Faroe Islands' status as a Danish AMT was thereby brought to an end. The Faroe Islands were given a high degree of self-governance, supported by a financial subsidy from Denmark to recompense expenses the islands have on Danish services. At present, the islanders are about evenly split between those favouring independence and those who prefer to continue as a part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Within both camps there is a wide range of opinions. Of those who favour independence, some are in favour of an immediate unilateral declaration of independence. Others see it as something to be attained gradually and with the full consent of the Danish government and the Danish nation. In the Unionist camp there are also many who foresee and welcome a gradual increase in autonomy even while strong ties with Denmark are maintained. As of 2011, a new draft Faroese constitution is being drawn up. However, the draft has been declared by the Danish Prime Minister, Lars Løkke Rasmussen, as incompatible with Denmark's constitution, and if the Faroese political parties wish to continue with it, then they must declare independence. Relationship with the European Union. As explicitly asserted by both treaties of the European Union, the Faroe Islands are not part of the European Union. The Faroes are not grouped with the EU when it comes to international trade. For instance, when the EU and Russia imposed reciprocal trade sanctions on each other over the war in Donbass in 2014, the Faroes began exporting significant amounts of fresh salmon to Russia. Moreover, a protocol to the Treaty of Accession of Denmark to the European Communities stipulates that Danish nationals residing in the Faroe Islands are not considered Danish nationals within the meaning of the treaties. Hence, Danish people living in the Faroes are not citizens of the European Union, though other EU nationals living there remain EU citizens. The Faroes are not covered by the Schengen Agreement, but there are no border checks when travelling between the Faroes and any Schengen country. The Faroes have been part of the Nordic Passport Union since 1966, and since 2001 there have been no permanent border checks between the Nordic countries and the rest of the Schengen area as part of the Schengen Agreement. Relationship with international organizations. The Faroe Islands are not a fully independent country, but they do have political relations directly with other countries through agreement with Denmark. The Faroe Islands are a member of some international organizations as though they were an independent country. The Faroe Islands are a member of several international sports federations like UEFA, FIFA in football and FINA in swimming and EHF in handball and have their own national teams. The Faroe Islands have their own telephone country code, internet country code, top-level domain, banking code and postal country code. The Faroe Islands make their own agreements with other countries regarding trade and commerce. When the EU embargo against Russia started in 2014, the Faroe Islands were not a part of the embargo because they are not a part of EU, and the islands had just themselves experienced a year of embargo from the EU including Denmark against the islands. The Faroese Prime Minister Kai Leo Johansson went to Moscow to negotiate the trade between the two countries. The Faroese Minister of Fisheries negotiates with the EU and other countries regarding the rights to fish. Demographics. The vast majority of the population are ethnic Faroese, of Norse and Celtic descent. Recent DNA analyses have revealed that Y chromosomes, tracing male descent, are 87% Scandinavian. The studies show that mitochondrial DNA, tracing female descent, is 84% Celtic. There is a gender deficit of about 2,000 women owing to migration. As a result, some Faroese men have married women from the Philippines and Thailand, who they met through such channels as online dating websites, and arranged for them to emigrate to the islands. This group of approximately 300 women make up the largest ethnic minority in the Faroes. The total fertility rate of the Faroe Islands is currently one of the highest in Europe. The fertility rate is 2.409 children born per woman 2015 est. The 2011 census shows that of the approximately 48,600 inhabitants of the Faroe Islands, 17,441 private households in 2011, 43,135 were born in the Faroe Islands, 3,597 were born in the other two countries of the Kingdom of Denmark, Denmark or Greenland, and 1,614 were born outside the Kingdom of Denmark. People were also asked about their nationality, including Faroese. Children under 15 were not asked about their nationality. 97% said that they were ethnic Faroese, which means that many of those who were born in either Denmark or Greenland consider themselves as ethnic Faroese. The other 3% of those older than 15 said they were not Faroese, 515 were Danish, 433 were from other European countries, 147 came from Asia, 65 from Africa, 55 from the Americas, 23 from Russia. The Faroe Islands have people from 77 different nationalities. If the first inhabitants of the Faroe Islands were Irish monks, then they must have lived as a very small group of settlers. Later, when the Vikings colonized the islands, there was a considerable increase in the population. However, it never exceeded 5,000 until the 19th century. Around 1349, about half the population perished in the Black Death plague. Only with the rise of the deep-sea fishery and thus independence from agriculture in the island's harsh terrain and with general progress in the health service was rapid population growth possible in the Faroes. Beginning in the 19th century, the population increased tenfold in 200 years. At the beginning of the 1990s, the Faroe Islands entered a deep economic crisis leading to heavy emigration, however, this trend reversed in subsequent years to a net immigration. This has been in the form of a population replacement as young Faroese women leave and are replaced with Asian, Pacific brides. In 2011, there were 2,155 more men than women between the age of 0 to 59 in the Faroe Islands. The Faroese population is spread across most of the area. It was not until recent decades that significant urbanization occurred. Industrialization has been remarkably decentralized, and the area has therefore maintained quite a viable rural culture. Nevertheless, villages with poor harbor facilities have been the losers in the development from agriculture to fishing, and in the most peripheral agricultural areas, also known as Utoighur, outer islands, there are few young people. In recent decades, the village-based social structure has nevertheless been placed under pressure, giving way to a rise in interconnected centers that are better able to provide goods and services than the badly connected periphery. This means that shops and services are now relocating en masse from the villages into the centers, and slowly but steadily the Faroese population is concentrating in and around the centers. In the 1990s, the government abandoned the old national policy of developing the villages and instead began a process of regional development. The term, region, referred to the large islands of the Faroes. Nevertheless, the government was unable to press through the structural reform of merging small rural municipalities to create sustainable, decentralized entities that could drive forward regional development. As regional development has been difficult on the administrative level, the government has instead invested heavily in infrastructure, interconnecting the regions. In general, it is becoming less valid to regard the Faroes as a society based on separate islands and regions. The huge investments in roads, bridges and sub-sea tunnels, see also transport in the Faroe Islands, have bound the islands together, creating a coherent economic and cultural sphere that covers almost 90% of the population. From this perspective, it is reasonable to regard the Faroes as a dispersed city or even to refer to it as the Faroese Network City. Topic: Language. Topic: Faroese is spoken in the entire area as a first language. It is difficult to say exactly how many people worldwide speak the Faroese language, because many ethnic Faroese live in Denmark, and few who are born there return to the Faroes with their parents or as adults. The Faroese language is one of the smallest of the Germanic languages. Written Faroese grammar and vocabulary is most similar to Icelandic and to their ancestor Old Norse, though the spoken language is closer to Norwegian dialects of western Norway. Faroese is the first official language of the island, while Danish, the second, is taught in schools and can be used by the Faroese government in public relations. Faroese language policy provides for the active creation of new terms in Faroese suitable for modern life. Topic: Religion. According to the Færøinga saga, Sigmundur Brestesson brought Christianity to the islands in 999. However, archaeology at a site in Toftanes, Lervik named Bonostoftin English, Prayer House Ruin, and over a dozen slabs from Ålandsgåror in the small island of Skúvoy, which in the main display encircled linear and outline crosses, suggest that Celtic Christianity may have arrived at least 150 years earlier. The Faroe Islands Church Reformation was completed on 1 January 1540. According to official statistics from 2017, 80.2% of the Faroese population are members of the state church, the Church of the Faroe Islands, a form of Lutheranism. The Folkekirken became an independent church in 2007, previously it had been a diocese within the Church of Denmark. Faroese members of the clergy who have had historical importance include Wenceslaus Ulricus Hammershaimb (1819–1909), Friarakor Petersen (1853–1917), and, perhaps most significantly, Jakob Dahl (1878–1944), who had a great influence in ensuring that the Faroese language was spoken in the church instead of Danish. Participation in churches is more prevalent among the Faroese population than among most other Scandinavians. In the late 1820s, the Christian evangelical religious movement, the Plymouth Brethren, was established in England. In 1865, a member of this movement, William Gibson Sloane, travelled to the Faroes from Shetland. At the turn of the 20th century, the Faroese Plymouth Brethren numbered 30. Today, around 10% of the Faroese population are members of the Open Brethren community. About 3% belong to the Charismatic movement. There are several charismatic churches around the islands, the largest of which, called Keldon the Spring, has about 200 to 300 members. About 2% belong to other Christian groups. The Adventists operate a private school in Tórshavn. Jehovah's Witnesses also have 4 congregations with a total of 121 members. The Roman Catholic congregation has about 170 members and falls under the jurisdiction of Denmark. Roman Catholic Diocese of Copenhagen. The municipality of Tórshavn has an old Franciscan school. There are also around 15 Baha'is who meet at 4 different places. The Ahmadiyas established a community in the Faroe Islands in 2010. Unlike Denmark, Sweden and Iceland with Fornsur, the Faroes have no organized heathen community. The best-known church buildings in the Faroe Islands include Tórshavn Cathedral, Olaf II of Norway's church and the Magnus Cathedral in Kirkjubøur, the Vesterkirken and the Maria Church, both of which are situated in Tórshavn, the Church of Famjön, the Octagonal Church in Haldersvik, Christianskirken in Klaksvik, and also the 2 pictured here. In 1948, Victor Danielsson Plymouth Brethren completed the first Bible translation into Faroese from different modern languages. Jakob Dahl and Christian Osvald Videro completed the second translation in 1961. The latter was translated from the original biblical languages, Hebrew and Greek, into Faroese. According to the 2011 census, there were 33,018 Christians, 95.44%, 23 Muslims, 0.07%, 7 Hindus, 0.02%, 66 Buddhists, 0.19%, 12 Jews, 0.03%, 13 Bahá'í, 0.04%, 3 Sikhs, 0.01%, 149 others, 0.43%, 85 with more than one belief, 0.25%, and 1,397 with no religion, 4.04%. Topic: Education. Topic: The levels of education in the Faroe Islands are primary, secondary and higher education. Most institutions are funded by the state. There are few private schools in the country. Education is compulsory for 9 years between the ages of 7 and 16. Compulsory education consists of 7 years of primary education and 2 years of lower secondary education. It is public, free of charge, provided by the respective municipalities, and is called the Folkeskole in Faroese. The Folkeskole also provides optional preschool education as well as the 10th year of education that is a prerequisite to get admitted to upper secondary education. Students that complete compulsory education are allowed to continue education in a vocational school, where they can have job-specific training and education. Since the fishing industry is an important part of country's economy, maritime schools are an important part of Faroese education. Upon completion of the 10th year of Folkeskole, students can continue to upper secondary education, which consists of several different types of schools. Higher education is offered at the University of the Faroe Islands. A part of Faroese youth moves abroad to pursue higher education, mainly in Denmark. Other forms of education comprise adult education and music schools. The structure of the Faroese educational system bears resemblances with its Danish counterpart. In the 12th century, education was provided by the Catholic Church in the Faroe Islands. The Church of Denmark took over education after the Protestant Reformation. Modern educational institutions started operating in the last quarter of the 19th century and developed throughout the 20th century. The status of the Faroese language in education was a significant issue for decades, until it was accepted as a language of instruction in 1938. Initially, education was administered and regulated by Denmark. In 1979, responsibilities on educational issues started transferring to the Faroese authorities, a procedure which was completed in 2002. The Ministry of Education, Research and Culture has the jurisdiction of educational responsibility in the Faroe Islands. Since the Faroe Islands is a constituent country of the Danish realm, education in the Faroe Islands is influenced and has similarities with the Danish educational system. There is an agreement on educational cooperation between the Faroe Islands and Denmark. In 2012, the public spending on education was 8.1% of GDP. The municipalities are responsible for the school buildings for children. Education in Folkeskolen from age 1st grade to 9th or 10th grade, age 7 to 16. In November 2013, 1,615 people, or 6.8% of the total number of employees, were employed in the education sector. Of the 31,270 people aged 25 and above, 1,717 (5.5%) have gained at least a master's degrees or a PhD, 8,428 (27%) have gained a BSc, or a diploma, 11,706 (37.4%) have finished upper secondary education, while 9,419 (30.1%) has only finished primary school and have no other education. There is no data on literacy in the Faroe Islands, but the CIA Factbook states that it is probably as high as in Denmark proper, i.e. 99%. The majority of students in upper secondary schools are women, although men represent the majority in higher education institutions. In addition, most young Faroese people who relocate to other countries to study are women. Out of 8,535 holders of bachelor degrees, 4,796 (56.2%) have had their education in the Faroe Islands, 2,724 (31.9%) in Denmark, 543 in both the Faroe Islands and Denmark, 94 (1.1%) in Norway, 80 in the United Kingdom and the rest in other countries. Out of 1,719 holders of master's degrees or PhDs, 1,249 (72.7%) have had their education in Denmark, 87 (5.1%) in the United Kingdom, 86 (5%) in both the Faroe Islands and Denmark, 64 (3.7%) in the Faroe Islands, 60 (3.5%) in Norway and the rest in other countries, mostly EU and Nordic. Since there is no medical school in the Faroe Islands, all medical students have to study abroad. As of 2013, out of a total of 96 medical students, 76 studied in Denmark, 19 in Poland, and 1 in Hungary. Topic: Economy. Topic: Economic troubles caused by a collapse of the Faroese fishing industry in the early 1990s brought high unemployment rates of 10 to 15% by the mid-1990s. Unemployment decreased in the later 1990s, down to about 6% at the end of 1998. By June 2008, unemployment had declined to 1.1%, before rising to 3.4% in early 2009. In December 2014, the unemployment was 3.2%. Nevertheless, the almost total dependence on fishing and fish farming means that the economy remains vulnerable. One of the biggest private companies of the Faroe Islands is the salmon farming company Bakkafrost, which is the largest of the 4 salmon farming companies in the Faroe Islands and the 8th biggest in the world. Petroleum found close to the Faroese area gives hope for deposits in the immediate area, which may provide a basis for sustained economic prosperity. 0.13% of the Faroe Islands' national income comes as economic aid from Denmark. This corresponds to roughly 5% of GDP. Since 2000, the government has fostered new information technology and business projects to attract new investment. The introduction of Burger King in Tórshavn was widely publicized as a sign of the globalization of Faroese culture. It remains to be seen whether these projects will succeed in broadening the islands' economic base. The islands have one of the lowest unemployment rates in Europe, but this should not necessarily be taken as a sign of a recovering economy, as many young students move to Denmark and other countries after leaving high school. This leaves a largely middle-aged and elderly population that may lack the skills and knowledge to fill newly developed positions on the Faroes. Nonetheless, in 2008 the Faroes were able to make a $52 million loan to Iceland to help with that country's banking woes. On 5 August 2009, two opposition parties introduced a bill in the Lagting to adopt the euro as the national currency, pending a referendum. Transport. By road, the main islands are connected by bridges and tunnels. Government-owned Strandfaraskip provides public bus and ferry service to the main towns and villages. There are no railways. By air, Scandinavian Airlines and the government-owned Atlantic Airways both have scheduled international flights to Vagar Airport, the island's only airport. Atlantic Airways also provides helicopter service to each of the islands. All civil aviation matters are controlled from the Civil Aviation Administration Denmark. By sea, Smurl Line operates a regular international passenger, car and freight service linking the Faroe Islands with Seyðisfjörður, Iceland and Hirtshals, Denmark. Because of the rocky terrain in the Faroe Islands, its road transport system was not as extensive as in other places of the world. This situation has now changed, and the infrastructure has been developed extensively. Some 80% of the population of the islands is connected by tunnels through the mountains and between the islands, bridges and causeways that link the three largest islands and three other larger and smaller islands to the northeast together. While the other two large islands to the south of the main area, Sandoy and Suðuroy, are connected to the main area with ferries, the small islands Kultur and Stora Dimman have no ferry connection, only helicopter service. Other small islands, Mykines in the west, Kalsoy, Svinoy and Fugloy in the north, Hestor west of Streymoy, and Nólsoy east of Tórshavn, have smaller ferries, and some of these islands even have helicopter service. In February 2014 all the political parties of the Lagting agreed on making two subsea tunnels, one between Streymoy and Eysturoy, the Eysturoyartunnelen, and one between Streymoy and Sandoy, Sandoyartunnelen. The plan is that both tunnels should open in 2021 and they will not be private. The work to dig the Eysturoy tunnel started on 1 March 2016 above the village of Hvitanes near Tórshavn. Culture. The culture of the Faroe Islands has its roots in the Nordic culture. The Faroe Islands were long isolated from the main cultural phases and movements that swept across parts of Europe. This means that they have maintained a great part of their traditional culture. The language spoken is Faroese, and it is one of three insular North Germanic languages descended from the Old Norse language spoken in Scandinavia in the Viking Age, the others being Icelandic and the extinct Norn, which is thought to have been mutually intelligible with Faroese. Until the 15th century, Faroese had a similar orthography to Icelandic and Norwegian, but after the Reformation in 1538, the ruling Norwegians outlawed its use in schools, churches and official documents. Although a rich spoken tradition survived, for 300 years the language was not written down. This means that all poems and stories were handed down orally. These works were split into the following divisions: Sagnir historical, Eventyr stories, and Kvæði ballads, often set to music and the medieval chain dance. These were eventually written down in the 19th century. Topic: Faroese literature. Topic: Faroese written literature has only really developed in the past 100 to 200 years. This is mainly because of the island's isolation, and also because the Faroese language was not written down in a standardized format until 1890. The Danish language was also encouraged at the expense of Faroese. Nevertheless, the Faroes have produced several authors and poets. A rich centuries-old oral tradition of folk tales and Faroese folk songs accompanied the Faroese chain dance. The people learned these songs and stories by heart, and told or sung them to each other, teaching the younger generations too. This kind of literature was gathered in the 19th century and early 20th century. The Faroese folk songs, in Faroese called kavai, are still in use although not so large scale as earlier. Some of the Faroese folk songs have been used by the Faroese Viking metal band Tyr, i.e., Ormurinn Langi. The first Faroese novel, Babelstorni by Regin I. Lee, was published in 1909, the second novel was published 18 years later. In the period 1930 to 1940 a writer from the village Skalavik on Sandoy Island, Hein Bru, published 3 novels, Lonebra 1930, Fastadokor 1935 and Figura Fur English title, The Old Man and His Sons 1940. Figura Fur has been translated into several other languages. Martin Johansen from Sandvik wrote about life on Faroese fishing vessels. He published the novels Fiskamen 1946 and Ta Lysera Landi 1952. Well-known poets from the early 20th century are among others the two brothers from Tórshavn, Hans Andreas Djurhuus (1883–1951) and Janus Djurhuus (1881–1948). Other well-known poets from this period and the mid-20th century are Poul F. Johansen (1898–1970), Regin Dahl (1918–2007), and Tumas Napoleon Djurhuus (1928–71). Their poems are popular even today and can be found in Faroese song books and school books. Jens Pauli Heinesen (1932–2011), a school teacher from Sandavagor, was the most productive Faroese novelist. He published 17 novels. Steinbjorn B. Jacobsen (1937–2012), a schoolteacher from Sandvik, wrote short stories, plays, children's books and even novels. Most Faroese writers write in Faroese. 2 exceptions are William Heinesen (1900–91) and Jorgen Frans Jacobsen (1900–38). Women were not so visible in the early Faroese literature except for Helena Patterson (1864–1916), but in the last decades of the 20th century and in the beginning of the 21st century, female writers like Ebba Hense, born 1933, wrote children's books, short stories, etc. Guri Helmsdal published the first modernistic collection of poems, Lit Lot, in 1963, which at the same time was the first collection of Faroese poems written by a woman. Her daughter, Rachel Helmsdal, born 1966, is also a writer, best known for her children's books, for which she has won several prizes and nominations. Other female writers are the novelists Oddvar Johansson, born 1941, Bergtora Hanusadottir, born 1946, and novelist, children's books writers Marianne Deebs Dahl, born 1947, and Solrun Mikkelsen, born 1948. Other modern Faroese writers include Gunnar Hoydal, born 1941, Hannes Kamben, born 1942, Jogvan Isaacson, born 1950, Jones Nielsen, born 1953, Torador Paulsen, and Carl Johan Jensen, born 1957. Some of these writers have been nominated for the Nordic Council's Literature Prize 2 to 6 times, but have never won it. The only Faroese writer who writes in Faroese who has won the prize is the poet Roy Patterson, born 1947, who won the prize in 1986 for Lycosm. In the 21st century, some new writers had success in the Faroe Islands and abroad. Baror Oscarsson, born 1972, is a children's book writer and illustrator. His books won prizes in the Faroes, Germany, and the West Nordic Council's Children and Youth Literature Prize 2006. Though not born in the Faroe Islands, Matthew Landrum, an American poet and editor for the Strukto magazine, has written a collection of poems about the islands. Sissel Kampmann, born 1974, won the Danish literary prize Klaus Rifbjerg's Debutante Prize 2012, and Rachel Helmsdal has won Faroese and Icelandic awards. She has been nominated for the West Nordic Council's Children and Youth Literature Prize and the Children and Youth Literature Prize of the Nordic Council, representing Iceland, wrote the book together with an Icelandic and a Swedish writer, illustrator. Margin Siderbo Kjennes, born 1974, had success with her first novel Skriva I Sandin for teenagers. The book was awarded and nominated both in the Faroes and in other countries. She won the Nordic Children's Book Prize 2011 for this book, White Raven Deutsche Jugendbibliothek 2011, and nominated the West Nordic Council's Children and Youth Literature Prize and the Children and Youth Literature Prize of the Nordic Council 2013. Music. The Faroe Islands have an active music scene, with live music being a regular part of the island's life and many Faroese being proficient at a number of instruments. Multiple Danish Music Award winner Teitur Lassen calls the Faroes home and is arguably the island's most internationally well-known musical export. The islands have their own orchestra, the classical ensemble Alduburin, and many different choirs. The best known of these is Havnarkori. The best-known local Faroese composers are Sunleif Rasmussen and Christian Black, who is also head of the record company Tudel. The first Faroese opera was by Sunleif Rasmussen. It is entitled I Omansgari, The Madman's Garden, and was premiered on 12 October 2006 at the Nordic House. The opera is based on a short story by the writer William Heinesen. Young Faroese musicians who have gained much popularity recently are Ivar Paulsdottir, Anna Katrin Egilstra, Lena Andersson, Hogni Riestrup, Hogni Lisberg, Erika Hagum, Guri Hansdottir and Brandor Eni. Well-known bands include Tyr, Gestir, Hamfer, The Ghost, Boys in a Band, Orca, 200, Grandma's Basement, Sick, and the former band Clickhaze. The Festival of Contemporary and Classical Music, Sommertonar, is held each summer. The G Festival in Norragota in July and Sommerfestivaloren in Klaksvik in August are both large, open-air music festivals for popular music with both local and international musicians participating. The world-renowned Zappa Jazz Festival will be held August 2016. The Nordic House in the Faroe Islands. The Nordic House in the Faroe Islands Faroese, Norrlandahuset, is the most important cultural institution in the Faroes. Its aim is to support and promote Scandinavian and Faroese culture, locally and in the Nordic region. Erlendur Patterson (1913–86), Faroese member of the Nordic Council, raised the idea of a Nordic cultural house in the Faroe Islands. A Nordic competition for architects was held in 1977, in which 158 architects participated. Winners were Ola Steen from Norway and Kolbrun Ragnarsdottir from Iceland. By staying true to folklore, the architects built the Nordic house to resemble an enchanted hill of elves. The house opened in Tórshavn in 1983. The Nordic House is a cultural organization under the Nordic Council. The Nordic House is run by a steering committee of 8, of whom 3 are Faroese and 5 from other Nordic countries. There is also a local advisory body of 15 members, representing Faroese cultural organizations. The House is managed by a director appointed by the steering committee for a 4-year term. Traditional food. Traditional Faroese food is mainly based on meat, seafood and potatoes and uses few fresh vegetables. Mutton of the Faroe sheep is the basis of many meals, and one of the most popular treats is skerpikjot, well-aged, wind-dried mutton, which is quite chewy. The drying shed, known as a hjulor, is a standard feature in many Faroese homes, particularly in the small towns and villages. Other traditional foods are rawest kjø, semi-dried mutton, and reistor fisker, matured fish. Another Faroese specialty is tavost og spik, made from pilot whale meat and blubber. A parallel meat, fat dish made with offal is garnadalg. The tradition of consuming meat and blubber from pilot whales arises from the fact that a single kill can provide many meals. Fresh fish also features strongly in the traditional local diet, as do seabirds, such as Faroese puffins, and their eggs. Dried fish is also commonly eaten. There are 2 breweries in the Faroe Islands. The first brewery is called Foroya Bjor and has produced beer since 1888 with exports mainly to Iceland and Denmark. The second brewery is called Akara Bryggeri and was founded in 2010. A local specialty is Fredrik, a special brew made in Nólsoy. Production of hard alcohol such as snaps is forbidden in the Faroe Islands, hence the Faroese akvavit is produced abroad. Since the friendly British occupation, the Faroese have been fond of British food, in particular fish and chips and British-style chocolate such as Cadbury Dairy Milk, which is found in many of the island's shops. Whaling. There are records of drive hunts in the Faroe Islands dating from 1584. Whaling in the Faroe Islands is regulated by Faroese authorities but not by the International Whaling Commission, as there are disagreements about the Commission's legal authority to regulate cetacean hunts. Hundreds of long-finned pilot whales could be killed in a year, mainly during the summer. The hunts, called grindadrap in Faroese, are non-commercial and are organized on a community level. Anyone can participate. When a whale pod by chance is spotted near land, the participating hunters first surround the pilot whales with a wide semicircle of boats and then slowly and quietly begin to drive the whales towards the chosen authorized bay. When a pod of whales has been stranded, the killing is begun. Faroese animal welfare legislation, which also applies to whaling, requires that animals are killed as quickly and with as little suffering as possible. A regulation spinal lance is used to sever the spinal cord, which also severs the major blood supply to the brain, ensuring both loss of consciousness and death within seconds. The spinal lance has been introduced as preferred standard equipment for killing pilot whales and has been shown to reduce killing time to 1 to 2 seconds. This grindadrap is legal and provides food for many people in the Faroe Islands. However, a study has found whale meat and blubber to currently be contaminated with mercury and not recommended for human consumption, as too much may cause such adverse health effects as birth defects of the nervous system, high blood pressure, damaged immune system, increased risk for developing Parkinson's disease, hypertension, arteriosclerosis, and diabetes mellitus type 2. Therefore, we recommend that adults eat no more than 1 to 2 meals a month. Women who plan to become pregnant within 3 months, pregnant women, and nursing women should abstain from eating pilot whale meat. Pilot whale liver and kidneys should not be eaten at all. Some Faroese Islanders consider the hunt an important part of their culture and history. Animal rights groups, such as the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society, criticize it as being cruel and unnecessary, since it is no longer necessary as a food source for the Faroese people. The sustainability of the Faroese pilot whale hunt has been discussed, but with a long-term average catch of around 800 pilot whales on the Faroe Islands a year, the hunt is not considered to have a significant impact on the pilot whale population. There are an estimated 128,000 pilot whales in the northeast Atlantic, and Faroese whaling is therefore considered a sustainable catch by the Faroese government. Annual records of whale drives and strandings of pilot whales and other small cetaceans provide over 400 years of documentation, including statistics, and represents one of the most comprehensive historical records of wildlife utilization anywhere in the world. Sports. The Faroe Islands have competed in every biennial island games since they were established in 1985. The games were hosted by the islands in 1989 and Faroes won the island games in 2009. Football is by far the biggest sports activity on the islands, with 7,000 registered players out of the whole population of 50,000. 10 football teams contest the Faroe Islands Premier League, currently ranked 51st by UEFA's league coefficient. The Faroe Islands are a full member of UEFA, and the Faroe Islands national football team competes in the UEFA European Football Championship qualifiers. The country is also a full member of FIFA, and therefore the Faroe Islands football team also competes in the FIFA World Cup qualifiers. The country won its first ever competitive match when the team defeated Austria 1-0 in a UEFA Euro 1992 qualifying. The nation's biggest success in football came in 2014 after defeating Greece 1-0, a result that was considered the biggest shock of all time in football thanks to a 169-place distance between the teams in the FIFA World Rankings when the match was played. The team climbed 82 places to 105 on the FIFA ranking after the 1-0 win against Greece. The team went on to defeat Greece again on 13 June 2015 by a score of 2-1. On 9 July 2015 the national football team of the Faroes climbed another 28 places up on the FIFA ranking. IHF Emerging Nations Championship has been played twice, starting in 2015, and Faroe Islands national handball team has won both editions. The Faroe Islands are a full member of FINA and compete under their own flag at World Championships, European Championships and World Cup events. The Faroese swimmer Paul Johansen, born 1990, won a bronze medal at the 2012 FINA World Swimming Championships 25 meters and 4 silver medals at the European Championships 2010, 2013 and 2014, all medals won in the men's longest and second longest distance, the 1500 and 800 meters freestyle, short and long course. The Faroe Islands compete in the Paralympics and have won 1 gold, 7 silvers and 5 bronze medals since 1984 Summer Paralympics. 2 Faroese athletes have competed at the Olympics, but under the Danish flag, since the Olympic Committee does not allow the Faroe Islands to compete under its own flag. The 2 Faroese who have competed are the swimmer Paul Johansen in 2012 and the rower Katrine Olsen. She competed at the 2008 Summer Olympics in double sculler lightweight together with Julianne Rasmussen. Another Faroese rower, who is a member of the Danish national rowing team, is Sverre Sandberg Nielsen, who currently competes in single sculler, heavy weight. He has also competed in double sculler. He is the current Danish record holder in the men's indoor rowing, heavy weight. He broke a 9-year-old record in January 2015 and improved it in January 2016. He has also competed at the 2015 World Rowing Championships, making it to the semifinal. He competed at the 2015 World Rowing Championship Under-23 and made it to the final where he placed 4th. The Faroe Islands applied to the IOC for full Faroese membership in 1984, but as of 2017 the Faroe Islands are still not a member of the IOC, but in the 2015 European Games in Baku, Azerbaijan, and the Faroe Islands were not allowed to compete under the Faroese flag. They were, however, allowed to compete under the Ligue Européenne de Natation flag. Before this, the Faroese Prime Minister Kai Leo Holm Johansen had a meeting with the IOC President Thomas Bach in Lausanne on 21 May 2015 to discuss Faroese membership in the IOC. Faroese people are very active in sports. They have domestic competitions in football, handball, volleyball, badminton, swimming, outdoor rowing Faroese kaproar, and indoor rowing in rowing machines, horse riding, shooting, table tennis, judo, golf, tennis, archery, gymnastics, cycling, triathlon, running, and other competitions in athletics. During 2014, Faroe Islands was given the opportunity to compete in the Electronic Sports European Championship (ESEC) in esports. 5 players, all of Faroese nationality, faced Slovenia in the first round, eventually getting knocked out with a 0-2 score. At the 2016 Baku Chess Olympiad, the Faroe Islands got their first chess grandmaster. Helgi Ziska won his 3rd GM norm, and thus won the title of Chess Grandmaster. 2018 Faroe Islands was given another chance to compete internationally in e-sports, this time attending Northern European Minor Championship 2018. Team captain this year was Rokor Dam Norøy. Clothing. Faroese handicrafts are mainly based on materials available to local villages—mainly wool. Garments include jumpers, scarves, and gloves. Faroese jumpers have distinct Nordic patterns, each village has some regional variations handed down from mother to daughter. There has recently been a strong revival of interest in Faroese knitting, with young people knitting and wearing updated versions of old patterns emphasized by strong colors and bold patterns. This appears to be a reaction to the loss of traditional lifestyles, and as a way to maintain and assert cultural tradition in a rapidly changing society. Many young people study and move abroad, and this helps them maintain cultural links with their specific Faroese heritage. There has also been a great interest in Faroese sweaters from the TV series The Killing, where the main actress, Detective Inspector Sarah Lund, played by Sophie Grabal, wears Faroese sweaters. Lace knitting is a traditional handicraft. The most distinctive trait of Faroese lace shawls is the center-back gusset shaping. Each shawl consists of 2 triangular side panels, a trapezoid-shaped back gusset, an edge treatment, and usually shoulder shaping. These are worn by all generations of women, particularly as part of the traditional Faroese costume as an overgarment. The traditional Faroese national dress is also a local handicraft that people spend a lot of time, money, and effort to assemble. It is worn at weddings and traditional dancing events, and on feast days. The cultural significance of the garment should not be underestimated, both as an expression of local and national identity and a passing on and reinforcing of traditional skills that bind local communities together. A young Faroese person is normally handed down a set of children's Faroese clothes that have passed from generation to generation. Children are confirmed at age 14, and normally start to collect the pieces to make an adult outfit, which is considered as a rite of passage. Traditionally, the aim would have been to complete the outfit by the time a young person was ready to marry and wear the clothes at the ceremony, though it is mainly only men who do this now. Each piece is intricately hand-knitted, dyed, woven or embroidered to the specifications of the wearer. For example, the man's waistcoat is put together by hand in bright blue, red or black fine wool. The front is then intricately embroidered with colorful silk threads, often by a female relative. The motifs are often local Faroese flowers or herbs. After this, a row of Faroese-made solid silver buttons are sewn on the outfit. Women wear embroidered silk, cotton or wool shawls and pinafores that can take months to weave or embroider with local flora and fauna. They are also adorned with a hand-woven black and red ankle-length skirt, knitted black and red jumper, a velvet belt, and black 18th-century-style shoes with silver buckles. The outfit is held together by a row of solid silver buttons, silver chains and locally made silver brooches and belt buckles, often fashioned with Viking-style motifs. Both men's and women's national dress are extremely costly and can take many years to assemble. Women in the family often work together to assemble the outfits, including knitting the close-fitting jumpers, weaving and embroidering, sewing and assembling the national dress. This tradition binds together families, passes on traditional crafts, and reinforces the Faroese culture of traditional village life in the context of a modern society. Public holidays. Olavesoka is on 29 July, it commemorates the death of Saint Olaf. The celebrations are held in Tórshavn, starting on the evening of the 28th and continuing until the 31st. The 28th of July is a half-working day for the members of some of the labor unions, while Olavsøkudagur, St. Olaf's Day, on the 29th of July is a full holiday for most but not all union members. The official celebration starts on the 29th with the opening of the Faroese Parliament, a custom that dates back 900 years. This begins with a service held in Tórshavn Cathedral. All members of parliament as well as civil and church officials walk to the cathedral in a procession. All of the parish ministers take turns giving the sermon. After the service, the procession returns to the parliament for the opening ceremony. Other celebrations are marked by different kinds of sports competitions, the rowing competition in Tórshavn Harbour being the most popular, art exhibitions, pop concerts, and the famous Faroese dance in Sjónleikarhúsið and on Vagli outdoor singing on 29 July, continuing after midnight on 30 July. The celebrations have many facets, and only a few are mentioned here. Many people also mark the occasion by wearing the national Faroese dress. See also Outline of the Faroe Islands, Faroese Dane, Faroese language conflict, Gotudansk accent, Faroe-Soviet Friendship Association. References. Further reading. External links. The Government of the Faroe Islands website, the Home Rule Act of the Faroe Islands, the Unity of the Realm status of the Faroe Islands within the Kingdom of Denmark.